All right, let's jump right in because today we're talking about a huge idea, one that gets at a fundamental question about where exactly all of humanity is headed. We're going to unpack this concept called the trajectory commons, which is basically a potential map for our collective future. Think about it. Right now, there are something like 8 billion of us on this planet. That's 8 billion different lives with different hopes, different dreams, different fears, all moving through time together on this one little rock. So, that brings up this massive, kind of overwhelming question, right? Where are we all going together? Is our collective path just this random, chaotic drift? Or could we, actually have a say in where we end up? Well, before we can even think about answering that, we've got to face the core problem head on. Right now, we have what you could call an unsteered future, and it's mostly because our collective attention is all over the place. You see, our shared path isn't decided in some secret room by a committee. It's just the natural result of what we all collectively pay attention to. What we notice, what keeps us up at night, what we're hopeful about. That stuff sets our priorities, and our priorities determine what we actually do. It's pretty simple, really. Attention shapes our trajectory. And here's the kicker. Right now, that whole process is basically random. It's implicit, it's chaotic, it just kind of happens. There's no dashboard for humanity, no steering wheel. We're all on this giant ship together, but nobody's actually navigating. And to be more specific, we're missing the most basic tools for coordination. I mean, think about it. We have no shared space to just log what we're seeing in the world, no way to group together our biggest worries or to compare the different kinds of futures we want to build, and definitely no way to explore solutions and actually coordinate our actions. So, if that's the problem, what's the solution? This is where the idea of the trajectory commons comes in. It's a proposal for a totally new kind of global tool, a map, really, of all our possible futures. Okay, so what is this thing? Imagine a huge, open, digital public square, a place where anyone can just express their thoughts about the future in normal, everyday language. And then really powerful AI helps take all of that messy human input and turns it into a living, breathing, navigable map of where we could go from here. Now, this next part is really important. This is not, I repeat, not about creating one single master plan for the world. That sounds like a dystopia, and that's not what this is. Instead, think of it as a map of many possible paths, giving us a tool to finally see the options and collectively decide how we want to steer. I know, this all probably sounds a little far-fetched, right? Like something out of a sci-fi novel. But here's the thing. A huge technological breakthrough has suddenly made this a real possibility. Let's talk about the AI intention compiler. Just think back a few years. Before we had large language models, LLMs, the very idea of taking billions of messy, emotional human statements and making any sense of them was, well, it was impossible. A total fantasy. But now, we can actually compile all that beautiful human chaos into structured data we can understand and use. And that, right there, is a total game changer. So when we say a compiler for human intention, what do we mean? It's a great metaphor. Think of it like an AI translator. It takes all of our messy, natural, human ways of talking about our hopes and fears and goals, and it organizes all of it into clear, coherent themes that we can actually look at and work with. And this AI compiler would be way more than just a fancy filing cabinet. It would be an active partner. It could pull out the key ideas from what people are saying, group similar concerns together, and even point out where our goals might conflict with each other. And maybe most importantly, it could help us brainstorm different solutions and connect our vague worries to actual projects we can act on. Okay, so that's the big idea. But how would it actually work in practice? How would you design something this ambitious? Let's get into the blueprint. So to make this whole thing work without it turning into a giant, confusing mess, there's a really crucial design principle at its core. It's called epistemic hygiene. Sounds complicated, I know, but the idea is actually super simple and brilliant. You just have to keep different kinds of thoughts separate from each other. It all comes down to separating everything into 5 distinct layers. You'd start with just the facts, the raw data. These are the observations. Then you move to problem framing. Why does this matter? What's at stake? Only after you've done that do you start talking about hypotheses for what might work, then specific interventions or solutions, and finally, you get to concrete plans and commitments. This structure is key because it stops us from jumping to solutions before we even agree on what the problem is. So let's make this real. What would it actually feel like to use this thing? Imagine you just open it up and type in something that's on your mind, something simple and real, like I'm worried about biodiversity collapse. And here's the magic. Instead of that worry just disappearing into the internet void, the system actually responds. It would say, hey, you're not alone. Here are all the other people worried about this. It would show you related data, different ways of thinking about the problem, a whole menu of possible solutions, and even point you to projects that are already working on this. It would show you where your energy could actually make a difference. It turns your isolated anxiety into an on-ramp for collective action. All right, let's pull the camera way, way back for a second. What's the end game here? If a system like this actually existed and worked, what would it mean for humanity as a whole? What's the ultimate vision? Now, to really get at the heart of this, the source material uses a pretty wild comparison, but stick with me because it's powerful. The idea is that using this system is a little bit like praying. You're expressing your deepest hopes and fears about the future, you're speaking into something that feels much larger than yourself, and you're asking for a better path forward. But, and this is a huge but, the difference is everything. When you speak to the commons, the recipient isn't supernatural. It's a shared system that we built for us. And the outcome isn't based on faith alone. It's based on collective sense-making, on data, and on real, coordinated action. So at the end of the day, what this all comes down to is giving humanity a set of brand new superpowers. For maybe the first time ever, it would make our shared future legible. We could actually read the map. It would make it negotiable. We could have real, grown-up conversations about the destination. And, most incredible of all, it could make our future steerable. And just to be crystal clear, this is not about some perfect, centralized control. No way. This is about steering our future collectively, doing it out in the open with total transparency, welcoming all kinds of different viewpoints, and making sure all our assumptions are laid bare for everyone to see and debate. Which leaves us with one final thought, a question for you to chew on. If our collective future stopped being this invisible current that just pulls us along, and instead became a visible map with countless destinations, where would you, personally, choose to steer?